Hi again, welcome to CAFE Calculations. My name is Eric. Today we're going to be talking about the inverse law over addition and the inverse law over multiplication. This is actually a necessary axiom, for I used it in the last video to basically define or derive, define the axiom of the identity axiom. So now we get to state why those certain properties hold. So without getting any further deep into it, let's look into the axiom of the inverse over addition and over multiplication. So firstly, what does that mean? Over addition, it means this, that if I have some number a and I add it to its inverse, so the inverse we're going to say is going to be negative a, that is going to equal, once again a priori, 0. So you can kind of think of this, if this was an example, the most classic example is you can think of it as a deficit, like in banking. So if you have a positive number, you have money in the bank. If it's a negative number, you owe the bank money. So if I have something of a amount, and I take them away the same amount, what am I left with? 0. Now, once again, that seems obvious and maybe trivial, but if you remember from the last video, which was the identity, we said that any number plus 0 equals a, which is kind of another way of saying a plus its opposite also equals 0 by reshuffling the equation around. Once again, this is kind of the self-evidency, I know that's not probably a word, of mathematics. And this is where it's very important to understand this stuff, because this is where math has its own truth. And this truth is how we build up our civilization and build up our own science, build up our own world from this truth of these very basic axioms. These I think of them as like the big building blocks of a pyramid. These are like the first bottom layers of the blocks. So once again, inverse law over addition is a plus negative a equals 0. Now I can show this in a general case. I can prove this by saying let a equal b. So then we get, okay, let's substitute a to b. What do we get? We get b plus negative b equals 0. And of course, b minus b is also 0, and 0 equals 0. Check. Okay, let's look at the inverse law over multiplication. The inverse law over multiplication states a times 1 over a, that's the inverse of multiplication, is equal to 1. Okay, that once again may seem trivial. So if I have something and I multiply it by 1 over that thing or its inverse, you can also think of that as dividing by the same amount. So if I have 4 times 1 over 4, that's really the same thing as 4 over 4, which is 1. So let's just show it in general real quick to make sure it holds. So once again, we'll let a equal b. All right. Therefore, we get b times 1 over b, and b times 1 over b is the same as 1, which is equal to 1 on the other side, which it holds. Check. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the identity law, because we need the inverse law to be used to set up the identity law. So once again, today we had the inverse law over addition and or over multiplication. So a plus negative a equals 0, and a times 1 over itself equals 1. Thank you very much for listening to CAFE Calculations, the inverse law over addition and multiplication. And remember, always enjoy the process.